Hi, this is Keith Cutter with EMFremedy.com. It's time to talk about millimeter wave environmental exposures other than 5G telephony. So this is part of my continued learnings from being a beta tester for Safe Living Technologies' new Safe and Sound Pro millimeter wave RF meter. The bottom line is that areas thought to be safe from 5G millimeter wave deployment now face unexpected challenges with millimeter wave RF exposure. And areas already exposed to 5G millimeter wave deployment will have additional unexpected millimeter wave RF exposure. I feel like I've been to a magic show, only it's not the fun kind where you enjoy being deceived. You know, you go to a magic show and you expect the performer to engage in a little bit of misdirection. Your attention is directed over here while he's doing something else over there. There are two little-known issues which may cause involuntary millimeter wave RF exposure to all people who enter grocery stores. Can you believe that? Or spend time near roadways. Who doesn't buy groceries or spend time near roadways, if not driving on them or perhaps living next to one? Okay, so here's the two issues. In my small town where I live, and I am assuming by extension other grocery stores around the nation and potentially around the world. I don't know. You'll have to check in your particular area. But supermarket door sensors, which control the automatically opening doors, emit RF radiation. And the other issue is vehicular radar systems. So we're going to talk about each one of these in turn. Okay, so all four supermarkets in the nearest city where I live require millimeter wave RF exposure to enter the store. Unbelievable and unexpected. You know, we thought millimeter wave exposure was just a 5G telephony thing. So to have this millimeter wave exposure, to have it be, something that we didn't ask for, and it's ubiquitous in all these supermarkets, it's crazy. So my questions here with this is, must we use millimeter wave RF radiation to operate supermarket doors? I mean, really? Do we have to do that? There are many other possible solutions. You know, for example, a pressure pad. That's what I remember when I was a kid. You would step on a pressure pad and wham, the door would open, no problem. After that, I remember it moved to a photoelectric eye, a little light source on one end and a photoreceptor on the other. And as you walked past, it would sense that you were wanting to go in the door, and voila, the door would swing open. For goodness sakes, you know, even a doorman, I would pay a penny more per item in the supermarket to hire a doorman rather than being exposed or having my grandchildren exposed to millimeter wave radiation. My question is it worth the potential harm? And since everybody buys groceries, do we risk burying the potential epidemiological signal that millimeter wave RF is harmful by exposing everyone in the population? Is that a risk that we're taking? Is it worth that risk? Okay, so I struggled mightily to want to involve you all in what it was like taking these measurements. So I have a couple of short video segments, and I'm embarrassed to tell you how long it took to get them. And the challenge was in being able to take video during the exposure to the millimeter wave radiation and trying to show the meter at the same time. So we're going to take a look at what it was like to go into a supermarket. So you're going to ride along with me in this shopping cart that I'm pushing here as we go through. Take a listen. All right, so the setup in that video was for your enjoyment. It is not the way I normally take measurements. Normally, when I'm doing measurements for RF in a house, I take them at waist level. There's a number of reasons why I do it that way. I do it consistently, and I realized that I had that same habit when I was going into the supermarket there. I don't normally do supermarket assessments. I do in-home assessments. And perhaps I should have had and also the orientation of the antenna actually was proper for this setup, not so much in the next one I'll show you, but it was proper to have the antenna taking the readings in front and behind the meter and looking up the way it did. But I think I should have had it up at my head level. It seemed like the transmitter was above, and your head is in the closest proximity, and the millimeter wave radiation falls off quickly. So I think I would have had a lot higher readings if I would have done the measurements closer to the source of the radiation. So I mentioned in the small town in which I live, I have 4 different choices if I want to buy groceries. All 4 of these stores require you to be exposed to millimeter wave radiation just to get in the front door. There is one exception. The store called Yolks has a delicatessen door, and that didn't require any radiation exposure to walk in. You had the Herculean task of actually pushing that door open yourself, but I'll take that any day. So what I did is I took 3 measurements for each store that I entered with the new Safe and Sound Pro millimeter wave RF meter, and then I averaged those 3 readings to try to give a fair measurement with this meter. And what I found is that at the Yolks store, 11,253 microwatts per square meter on entry or exit. Safeway, 11,666 microwatts per square meter. Super One Foods, 22,666 microwatts per square meter, and Walmart, 17,266 microwatts per square meter. Am I the only one who feels slightly dizzy when they enter a supermarket? I wonder what the long-term damage is. All right, so I spent a little bit of time thinking about survival tactics for if the place where you're going to get your groceries does require that exposure. And the only way you're going to know is either get this meter for yourself and learn how to use it, or you should have a relationship with the excellent EMF consultant in your particular area. And if you have that relationship, call them up. Ask them which stores have that millimeter wave radiation according to their knowledge and which don't. So anyway, survival tactics. If you have not had a chance to either measure yourself or contact your local consultant to find out, you might want to assume that there is indeed millimeter wave radiation exposure on entry until you can verify one way or another. And put down in the comments whether you are seeing this same issue where you live. Okay, so survival tactics, and I've given some thought to what you can do to minimize your exposure. If you know there's millimeter wave radiation, you can shop elsewhere, and that's, of course, maybe the best way to avoid it entirely. You can try to find a manually operated door if there is one in the store. Not all stores have that option of actually pushing the door open for yourself and thereby sparing yourself from that RF. You could consider home delivery as an option, and failing all of these, if you must enter a millimeter wave controlled portal, maybe don't spend unnecessary time before, between, or after you pass through the doors. And what I mean by between is there's often two sets of doors with a breezeway between. Move away from the doors safely and quickly, and don't spend time near the doors. Maybe you don't want to choose the checkout stand right in front of or closest to the doors as well. All right, now we're going to take a look at the next environmental challenge, and that is vehicular radar. You know, I guess I'm vaguely aware that there are terms out there like adaptive cruise control, collision avoidance systems, and I don't know what the third one is called. I wrote down blind spot help. I'm sure that's not the marketing term that they're using to sell these conveniences, but that's what they are, is their conveniences. So at no extra charge here, I'll just mention that there are three factors that I have noticed: convenience, amusement, and stimulation. In my estimation, they have been used to justify each step in replacing the natural EMF environment created for us in the beginning with one that is totally foreign to life. So the question is, you can have a radar system in your new vehicle, but is the convenience potentially offered by that something that you can't do by just being an attentive driver or managing your own speed? Is it worth the millimeter wave radiation exposure to you and to everybody else on the road? So let me take you along for a ride. We're not moving. I'm going to take you along as others drive by. And this is just a bunch of short takes of, I had a setup here where I could see the meter reasonably well, and then cars as they drove by. And I'll go ahead and show you what it looked like as cars that had suspected onboard radar passing by. The reason I feel confident in saying that these are likely radar signatures and nothing else is because I live in a not very populated area, and we have a lot of interesting topography, lots of mountains and whatnot. So it would not be profitable in a sparsely populated area with the kind of terrain that we have here to install 5G telephony. And so I have not been able to find any 5G high band in the area. And that's why I believe as these cars passing by, the source of radiation there is the radar systems themselves. So let's take a listen as some of these pass by. Okay, I do want to notice that this setup in that video was for your enjoyment. It's not the way that I normally take my measurements. In this one in particular, the antenna is pointed absolutely the wrong way for taking these kind of measurements. And when I actually did the readings, which I spent a lot of time in different places doing that, I commonly found that the exposures were in the extreme range, which is greater than 1,000 microwatts per square meter. They're somewhat understated with the meter pointing up and down and the antenna not oriented properly, but I just wanted to give you a feel for what it is like. Other findings with the exposure to millimeter wave RF from vehicular radar is I'm seeing emissions from the front, from the rear, and occasionally even the sides of the vehicle. And the millimeter wave RF easily penetrates glass. I've spent a lot of time cruising around in the small town near where I live and larger areas nearby with the meter just turned on and on my dashboard. And I am just amazed. You know, you can be coming up to a stop sign or a stoplight, and if somebody next to you pulls up with a vehicular radar, it is unbelievable how much millimeter wave radiation is coming through the glass and entering the vehicle with you. So, you know, I have questions. I have questions about this. Is the convenience of adaptive cruise control worth exposing everyone to millimeter wave RF? I mean, you know, you're walking by the side of the road, you're going to be exposed. You're on the road, you're going to be exposed. If your house is near the road, you're going to be exposed. And, you know, what if you wanted to take your sweetheart out to lunch at your favorite cafe that has seating out on the sidewalk? You're going to be exposed. So, yeah, I have questions. Is the convenience of adaptive cruise control worth exposing everyone? We've lived this long without it. Do we really need it? Is it worth the potential harm? How can people who don't want to expose their children, for example, opt out of this madness? Will people have any idea what's causing a downturn in their health? And I would like to say the area that the small town that I live near is a resort community. We have an enormous lake, and we have a ski area in the winter, and we have lots of visitors that come in. And I've gotten a lot of people, folks who are sensitive to EMF, contacting me and saying, what is going on? And it was sort of the beginning of summer. And I wonder whether it is all the new visitors with all their new vehicles coming in with this vehicular radar. I wonder whether that's what's making people so sick. I don't know. And do we risk burying the epidemiological signal that millimeter wave RF is harmful by exposing everyone in the population? I just can't imagine how anyone is going to be spared from this kind of exposure, and we're on unfamiliar ground here, and I don't know if we can really expect legitimate research to be done in this area. So, yeah, very interesting time that we're in. All right, no extra cost at all. I just want to close with a rhetorical question. I want to ask, what is the appropriate level of technology? You know, given we've sort of been led along over the last 100 years, we had nothing but the natural electromagnetic environment 100 years ago. And that's been replaced with electric fields, alternating current electric fields. That don't exist in nature. Magnetic fields, alternating current magnetic fields with something called dirty electricity. And of course, what we're talking about today is radio frequency radiation. And every step along the way has been tied to one of these three: convenience, stimulation, or amusement. So what is the appropriate level of technology? Let me know in the comments what you think the answer is. Is it one that won't cause damage to life? Or is it something else? I don't know. I'm asking you. All right, this has been Keith Cutter with EMFremedy.com. Thanks for spending some time with us. We'll see you next time.